Okay, so today we're going to talk about probably one of the weirder games I'm ever going to talk about, and it is Hobomancer. Take a look at that hobo on the front there. Hobomancer is a game that takes place during the Great Depression in America. You play hobos with magical powers that ride the rails of America and try to fix the corrupted songlines. The songlines are basically the magic that makes the world work right and keeps our world separate from the other dimensions and other creatures and other things that can seep into our world and cause trouble. So, basically, you play a vagrant who rides from town to town with magical hobo powers that is trying to save the world from a bunch of people that don't really like you. And it works out pretty well. There are some inconsistencies with the game itself because I guess it wasn't put together quite right. And I don't know if there's a new edition coming out or anything, but there's not much you can do about it. In some places it says you're rolling your 20-sided die and you're trying to roll over the number, but then in other parts in the book it's for the same thing. It says you're rolling, but you have to roll under the target number. So pretty much if you're running, just pick one of those and stick with it and you'll be fine. And in that case, whichever, let your people know what you're doing ahead of time, so that way they can build their character accordingly. Because, of course, if you're trying to roll over a stat, then having lower stats is better, and if you're trying to roll under a stat, then having higher stats is better, so it determines how you want to put together all of your character base. Putting together a coherent story can be a little difficult. The game system itself is really easy. It runs specifically on a 20-sided die. There are no major issues there. One of the things that's kind of interesting about it is that there is a mechanic when you build your character that on your sheet it's who would play you in the movies, and that allows you to kind of get a really good sense of what kind of character you want to build, because you can think of like different actors or actresses and say this is the type of character that I want to play, and it gives you a kind of good idea of what that character looks like and how they sort of function in the world and that sort of thing. If you're my group, when we played, there were certain actors where you had to specify a movie because we kept making jokes about playing Nicolas Cage, and it's different if you're playing like Nicolas Cage from, say, Face Off, or Nicolas Cage from, say, The Sorcerer's Apprentice, or Nicolas Cage from, say, Ghost Rider. So it's the same person, but they're very different characters, and they put a very different flair on what particular type of character you're looking at, so you might want to think that through. I like it. It's kind of silly. It goes relatively quickly. It is a little difficult to come up with a cohesive story because you have to sort of... It would work well if you were doing like a flavor of the week, so you do like one story in one town, and then at the end of that game at the end of that game cycle, you move to another town, you just go from place to place to place. But that requires coming up with, if you're running weekly, a new story every week, or bi-weekly, like a lot of my games run, a new story every other week, which is a little easier. The times that we've played, it's worked out really well. It can be pretty harsh on players in terms of like when you're in combat, because when you roll contested rolls in combat, the damage you take is the difference between your roll and their roll. So if they roll really high and you roll really low, you can just flat out die in one turn, and that can be a little bit harsh, but it's something you'll have to deal with. You'll either like it or you won't, and that's fine. All in all, we enjoyed it. I ran it once. It was particularly interesting, and it worked out really well for a night. It has a system of outside interference, which is your yum-yums, which you can spend to make your rolls better or make other people's rolls worse. But I don't think particularly that they do enough to actually help the game, because they only work one for one. So if you missed your roll by like 5, then and you only have 3 yum-yums and it's a really important roll, there's like nothing you can do about it. You just don't have any way to make things better. If they were worth like maybe 5 or something like that, it might work a little better, because then it could actually affect your roll on a much grander scale, because you're rolling like 1 to 20, and in a roll of 1 to 20 the extra 1 doesn't really help. Unlike if you're playing like sort of a fate type game where your margin of success is 1 to 4, and your fate points give you +2 to a roll, that can be a really good marker as to whether you succeed or fail. So there is that. You can also use yum-yums to straight out succeed on an easy roll, and that in that case they are really useful. But the game itself is a little not as well put together as it could be, but I don't know if there's another edition ever coming out, so it's what you got. And if you're into sort of playing weird games and just enjoying a different setting or a different type of people, it works out really well. I like it.